yamsketch.
All right, hey guys, so we're back and we're taking a look at brush strokes here and making custom brushes. As you can see, we made a big old mess and also made some cool custom brushes. Basically this one though, we made a nice pen stroke brush that has variance. It's got wispiness when you're being light with the pressure, and it's got a nice toothiness when you come in strong. So this would be something like a nib brush, or like a round nib, or something like a pocket pen. So we've got a cool brush. That's neat. What I want to do is show you two ways to make a more advanced brush based on this brush. So one way is to think about a shape, like a basic shape. So a circle, so a circle is like that, or a square, squares like that, and then just fill it in loosely. So here's a circle, and I'm not trying to make a perfect circle, very, very purposefully not trying to make a perfect circle. It's like before, I like variety, so I want that. So I made this with my brush. So even though it's subtle, there's little details on the edges and stuff like this that will come in when we make our new preset based on this. So that's what makes it more advanced, like a layered brush preset. Let's make a square-ish shape. Again, I'm not going for an exact square. I'm just gonna make a rectangle-y thing with blotches and so on. Great. Let's make something a little bit more fantastic. Let's make a scribble, like a full-on scribble. Great. And then let's make a series of dots. So there's a couple different kinds of brushes, and as you make more of these, you'll kind of get used to what does what. But just so you know, this is essentially going to be like a round brush here. This one is going to be like a chisel tip, or a square nib, or a marker, or anything that's like has kind of a calligraphy feel to it. This thing here is actually going to be similar to a round brush also. It's just going to have more spazzy variety to it, which I like. This guy, because it's a series of dots, is actually going to create a bristle brush effect, where bristles actually touch down, sort of, not everything touches down at the same time. Some bristles touch the canvas or the paper first, so you get more of a scratchy feel to it. So that's rad. And then let's do a special effect brush. So let's do a fur or hair brush. This is one, you can do a ton of varieties of this. Let's make one like that. So here's some fur hair brushes, and then just so you can see it, because they're kind of fun too, let's do like a rake brush. Okay, so what's cool about these is that, actually, I'm sorry, that's actually more like a crosshatch. This is a crosshatch brush, which is fine too, but a rake brush is actually more like this. All right, so there's a rake. Okay, so all of these have different features, but the cool thing is we drew them with our pen that we already created from some earlier basic shapes, so they're gonna be a little bit more organic. And I've seen a lot of people create these basic brushes with essentially like the Photoshop start off brush, this round circle here. And that's fine, but the thing is, now your custom brush has just lost that like organic look that the rest of your strokes probably have, because you've already made a custom brush for that. So for me, I think you want to go from basic and make something a little bit more complex, and then make your more complex things based off of that, so that each thing is kind of like the next layer of what you're doing. I think that's a way to push something forward towards being unique and you, because it's your drawing the whole time. You're not going back to the beginning. We only had to use this to start. Now we don't have to use it ever again. And honestly, don't, because it sucks. So, all right, so now we're going to use these brushes to make some new brushes. So it's super simple. You just pop in here. Again, remember, it ignores white. You don't have to make a transparent layer or anything like that. It can all just be on white. It doesn't matter. So let's define that. Again, these are the basic shapes. I don't care what they're called. So let's move this over here. Do that. Boom. Move that here. Boom. 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 Move that here. Boom. Boom. All right, and you get the picture. So we're gonna do that with all of these. And then I'll show you a way that you can kind of get some settings that you like and pop it in there, and you don't have to redo the settings from scratch each time, which I admit is annoying. Let's just There we go. All right, so now we have all these new presets. If we go to our brush, we look at our presets, you can see we got all these new ones down here. Let me see if I can get that higher on the screen there. So we have all our new ones down here. Now, remember, if we click on these, like if we click on any of these brushes, we've started off with our really crappy settings that Photoshop just wants to give us as a default for, I don't know why. They think that your graphics card sucks this bad. You got to space these brushes out like 1,000,000%. But basically that's super annoying. So I recommend, rather than doing that and then having to go into brush settings and reset the brush tip shape every time, which is pretty annoying, pick one of the defaults that you like, that you've created, perhaps like this one, right? And now instead of going to your brush menu and doing this, which resets this, just go to the brush tip shape within this tool preset and then pick one of these new ones. So do you see the difference there? So now it's going to keep all the settings that we have. It's just going to use this new brush tip shape, you know, within those settings. So now you can see that, okay, it's mimicking what we had before, but now it has a new brush tip shape. Okay, great, right? So that's actually a cool thing to do. And if you can't see enough presets here, I certainly can't. I'll just pull this down more. So, all right, so there's a ton in here, so bear with me for a second while I find what we're doing. Where is our guys? Where is they? Well, there we are. Okay, so why it didn't put them at the bottom is anyone's guess. I don't know. If you know that, go ahead and tell me. Anyway, they're right here. So first of all, we have our original shape, right? Then we have our shape based on drawing this shape out, this blotchy shape here, right? And you can see what that does. It creates a very blotchy effect, right? And because there are little pieces of detail at these edges that are gray, we actually kind of have some of that here. So if you come back down to a small size, you can see that there's a ton of detail in this one. Obviously, it's still a round brush, and it's going to look really similar to the preset we created before, but it is different. It's got more of a wispiness to it. It's got more variety. And when you start making a lot of these pens, these subtle details are actually what makes them fun. So we're going to grab this square brush here, which is this one. You see, and you can see what that did. Now, this one you can already see it's got a much like paper burnier, chunkier look to it, where it's really bleeding into the paper. So if we come down to a reasonable size, and again, I like to work big so I can see what I'm doing and then come down, and then I really know that that effect is preserved. And you can see that's exactly what it's doing. It's a paper burn pen. This is a really bleedy pen, or it's an old nib that's kind of starting to get worn down and a little maybe chipped or funky, which is awesome, by the way. Drawing with pens like that is super rad. So you can see it still has this cool effect like the other one, but it's got a really neat like paper burn thing going, which I really like. So the other cool thing about this is we already have a square, so we could screw with this even more. We could really push this into, you know, something that's even more, you know, paper burny. I'm saying paper burn like it burns into the paper when you pull across the paper. So it's, you know, the ink's bleeding a lot. So that's a really neat thing you can do. The other thing you can do is, because it's a square, changing the angle on this will really actually impact how the brush draws, and especially at angles. So I'm going to give this a little bit of angle, and then I'm going to save this as a new tool preset because it's rad. So let's call this, again, yamsketch _ you know, just copy that. Okay, so let's call this let's call it Bernie the Burner, because, you know, I love pen names that if I give them to someone else, they're gonna hate me because it doesn't mean anything to them. But this is a Bernie pen to me, so there it is. All right, so cool. So if you want to see that these are different, even though they're subtle, here's Bernie the Burner, right? Bernie the Burner, and here is the pocket pen that we made in the last episode. And you can see that, yes, they're both pretty naturalistic. yes, they're both kind of, you know, chunky ink pens, but they definitely don't look the same, and they don't draw the same. And that's what I'm looking for. I want variety here. So some clean pens, these ones are a little bit thicker and chunkier. So let's go on and let's keep modifying these. So that's what I wanted to do with this one. So let's go reset that, and let's take a look at one of these other shapes. So we have our little scratch nib, right? All right, cool. Look at that. Unsurprisingly, like I said, it's a little spazzy. So if we pull this down, it's basically going to be a round brush, but it's going to be a really fuzzy round brush. So it's kind of similar to the square in that it looks a little burny, but this is more like toothy. I would call this toothy. Feel free to write in the comments whether you feel that things look more burny or toothy, or your own word. You got to come up with words for this stuff because it's hard to describe it. All right, so that's an interesting one. But then these next ones are going to get really interesting. So here's our brush pen. So the thing is that when you scatter this stuff around, it can either look like blotches or textures, or you can drag it and it'll look like a brush. So I'm going to bring this size down, and you can see that right now this looks like a textured crayon. And that's because it's acting more like in a stamp way. So the cool thing about this is that this looks a lot like an oil crayon or a Conti crayon or some kind of charcoal. So that's already really rad. Like that's a flippin' charcoal thing, or like even, you know, like a dark drawing pencil. And as you come in, you can get this darker and darker. Then you could use this as a shading pen or pencil, or honestly, yeah, it looks a lot more like, you know, Conti or something like that. Whenever I'm just default doodling, I draw faces, you know, whatever. Okay, so so that's already rad, but I actually want to make this into more of a brush pen. So, and I'm talking about this one here. So when I have texture on and stuff like that, it's scattering across these dots, and that's why instead of getting like a pull to get a brush, I'm actually getting more of a, you know, a stippling effect, and that's what's kind of creating the pencil stroke look. Pencil or crayon or charcoal again. And then the other thing is the scattering, and this is probably actually the biggest one. Because I'm scattering, see, these dots down here are becoming more of a pattern that's being dotted on. Now again, that's not bad. Like, you can create a lot of cool brushes this way, and if you're trying to create pattern brushes and texture brushes, then rad, you're on your way. But if you don't want that, then for this particular brush, turn it off, okay? And so I'm gonna, I can actually literally just turn it off, and that's even better. So I'm gonna turn that off, and I'm gonna also turn off texture, okay? Just for now, we might bring it back. And then what I wanna do is I want to take a look at what's happening in the shape dynamics. So in this case, I have angle jitter, size jitter, a couple things like that. I'm going to turn those off, and I'm kind of dialing this back down for now, because what I want to do is make a sort of a different kind of brush with this. So I'm going to come down and make the spacing small, right? And then for the shape dynamics, I'm going to turn the angle jitter off. So what this angle jitter was doing, actually, sorry, I got to put this back up so you can see it. What this angle jitter was doing was rotating each stroke individually. So you can see the strokes down below in that little preview window. It rotates each one so that as it stamps them along, you get a lot more variety. Now that's really cool for certain things, but if you're making a rake brush, which we'll make in a second, or a bristle brush, you actually don't want that. Okay, so I'm turning that off. Now, so you can see they're all like the same in a row. Now, when I put the spacing down to, you know, like nothing, you can see, okay, finally we've got our bristle brush. Now we've got strokes, and they're bristly. Okay, so we ripped off everything so that we could actually have it be nice and straight. And that's what makes a bristle brush. So the bristle brush is essentially a bunch of little points hitting the screen and then getting dragged. And that's what makes it bristle. So if I just hit the ground, it's just like I drop my pen straight down from the air onto the canvas. But then when I pull it, it pulls those strands along with me, right? So that's actually a very cool and convincing bristle brush. And now that we have the basic look to it, we can bring in some back some of this stuff. So we don't really want to bring back scattering, but the texture we can actually get back, because we can still get where when we're pulling very lightly, we have sort of a toothiness to that canvas, and then when we're pushing more strongly, you'll see that the effect of that texture changes. So if that didn't make sense, tell me why not, and I'll fix it. But that is how you get to a bristle brush. So this is actually dialed back, and that's how we get a nice bristle. So I like that. So I'm going to save that one. That's going to just be our new tool preset. We're going to call that one Yam Basic Bris. All right, so that's a basic bris. So now, based on more advanced tips, we've created these very different brushes. So we got that burn brush, we got a bristle brush, and this is based on taking our previous brush, or the tip of our previous brush, and then using that to create even more advanced shapes. So you can really start to build on this. And the best part is that none of these shapes are going to have the smoothness and the yuckiness of the basic Photoshop circle brush. They're all going to have more tooth and more texture and more charm. And you can even see, based on that bristle brush, we can also make like a Conte crayon brush. So there's a ton of things you can do here. That's what I'm trying to say. So if we go back to this, okay, I want to show you what some of these special effect brushes can do. So we've got these brushes here. So the rake is actually really similar to the bristle in that we want it to dot and pull. So we don't want any of those scattering textures. So I'm going to go back to the basic bristle. And remember, this is a good technique. If you go to your brush presets palette and you hit one of these, it's just going to erase all your settings that you just spent time doing, and then you have to redo them, which is annoying. So don't do that. Go to the brush tool preset, sorry, not the brush preset, but the tool preset that is most similar to the brush that you want to create, and then just go to the brush tip shape and change it. And then it'll keep all the settings from that brush. So since this rake that we're going to make is really similar to the brush pen that we just made, the bristle brush, I'm going to pick the bristle brush tool preset, and then now I'm just going to go and grab this new tip shape, if I can find it. And let's see there you go. All right, so boom, 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 boom. So here's our rake. All right, and then we're going to have to modify a couple of settings, but for the most part, we have what we need. So here's our rake. Obviously, it's not working the way we want yet, and there is a reason for that. So first of all, this brush, I drew it across like this, dot, 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 from left to right. So so you have to just rotate it to match how you drew it. So I'm just going to rotate this down so you can see now, okay, here's my bristle rake. And then here's the other thing about a rake. I probably don't want, I mean, I might, that's kind of cool actually, but I probably don't want pressure to affect the size. So I'm actually going to go to shape dynamics, and I'm going to, I'm going to turn off pen pressure on this guy. I'm going to leave shape dynamics on, but I'm going to turn off pen pressure for size. Okay. We still have angle set to direction. And the reason we have that is so that when we change the direction of the brush, the rake moves with us, right? So that's good. But now the pressure of my brush does not affect the size of the rake, because I want this to be a rake brush, which basically means I want to drag and it's always the same size. And to change the size, I just move it this way, right? Okay. So then I go back here and I'm going to put the spacing back down to something reasonable so that it makes a smooth line. And now you can see we've got a rad little rake. Okay, so this rake still has texture, so that texture is affected by pen pressure. So pen pressure is still giving me an effect, which in this case is that on these lighter pressures, I get this like little scrape of the paper, right? Now I'm down below, check me out. All right, and then as I come in hard, I get this nice solid line. So I can still do this cool effect where I have things fading in and out, right? And rake brushes are rad because they're directional. You can use them with multiple strokes for cross hatching, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and cross hatch and stuff like that. Or you can use them to, you know, create patterns and shapes and all sorts of cool stuff. So actually rake brushes are really neat. Or you can use them to erase, to pull back color. So if I switch this from normal to clear, you can actually see that rake brushes are really cool. They're really cool for knocking stuff back and breaking stuff down in an interesting way. So when you want it to look like it's been sort of destroyed or grungy or ripped apart, but not necessarily completely. This isn't an eraser. It's like a way to add an effect, right? Okay, so I think that's rad. So that's a couple of cool ways that you can use a rake. And that's a couple of cool ways that we did use a rake. And if you go really small, you know, you can create these really cool crosshatch effects. And fill in whatever you're going to fill in with that. Let's make a little country scene. Ah, the fine wheat fields of America. Oh, look at that. And then, that's pretty good. Now we just need a farm. Well, the farm will have to wait. We're going to make a tool preset. So here we go. New tool preset. yamsketch, and this is going to be... a textured rake. So let's call it Texas rake. Not rake. Texas rake. Texas for textured. Because, you know, I don't know. All right, so now I'm going to use my little pocket pen, and we'll draw the country farm here. Let's see what is... I haven't actually been to a country farm in a little bit here, so you'll have to bear with me if I screw it up. And there's got to be like a tractor out there. Oh yes. All right, here we go. Or maybe it's a thresher. Maybe it's not a tractor. So there, we got our little urban farm. All right, so you can use these brushes to do a lot of cool stuff. The last two I have here are the fur brushes, and that's its own thing, so I'm going to show that to you next time. But as usual, if this is useful, let me know about it. If you hate it, let me know about it, but let me know about it nicely. And if you have any thing that you're wondering about or you're curious about, just leave it in the comments. Also, I will be adding these brushes to these videos. So if you want to download them and use them, go ahead. I know there's people that just want to draw and don't want to make brushes. And if that's the way you are, cool. Just grab them and go. So we'll keep making some more advanced brushes, and I will show you how to use and how to set up these fur brushes. They're also, you can use them for grass and some other cool stuff in the next video. All right, guys. See you later. Have a good one.
Yamsketch.